Hello students. In the last video lecture we discussed about the concept of functions, which included the purpose of functions, the benefits of functions, how to define functions in C++, and how to pass arguments, how to return values, and the different types of arguments we can pass, like the structures, objects, and also the return the call by value and call by reference. And also we discussed about the function overloading. So almost we have discussed all the points pertaining to functions, but there are few more concepts that needs to be covered for that particular topic. So I'm going to continue to discuss about functions in this particular video lecture also. First, there is something called inline functions in C++. So we will be discussing about what are inline functions, what is the advantage of inline functions, and how to implement inline functions. The benefit of inline function: normally when you make a function call, that is when you write a function which has a function calling statement for another function, you are actually invoking some other function from the current function. In this case we refer to the function that contains the function call as the calling function, and the function that is being called as the called function. So whenever in this kind of a situation arises, the compiler, after reaching the function calling statement, will jump to the called function. So it will skip the current function and will immediately proceed to the called function and will execute that particular function from its beginning till end. After that it will come back. So it will make a control transfer from the called function to the calling function, and meanwhile while going from calling function to the called function, it will take the arguments from this function to the other function, and while returning it will take the return value from the called function from the called function to the calling function. This is a normal procedure, and we have also seen in another video lecture that this particular process makes use of a stack. So a stack is used to push all the local values and the arguments of the calling function into the stack, and then they will be restored when the control returns back to the calling function again. So this is what really happens. So having seen this function call, control immediately transferred to the definition of the or body of the called function, and then it is executed thoroughly, and finally when the brace of the function is reached, that is closing brace of the function is reached, it returns to the calling function again and continues to execute the remaining statements of the calling function. So the drawback of this particular arrangement is that, number one, there is a wastage of time. You can see that there is a stack used. So every time a function call is made, now the address of the called function has to be identified, and in that case there is also the role of the function overloading. So when you have got many functions with the same name, then it has to be resolved with the help of the parameters, and then the values of the calling function has to be pushed into the stack, then only it can go to the called function. Similarly, while returning back also it has to perform similar tasks. So it is a time consuming process, but still it is considered to be acceptable because the functions provide a lot of advantages to programming. So even though it incurs this overhead, it is still considered to be a good idea to have a lot of functions in the programs. But sometimes we may want to avoid this. So especially when you are going to write a small function having few lines of code, then you don't want to go through this tedious process because it's just a small function. So there is a provision in C++ by which you can instruct or request the compiler to not to do that. So instead of doing a function calling and skipping to the current function and going to the called function, the compiler will copy paste the code of the called function in the place of the function call. So in other words, the function call will be function calling statement will be replaced by the function code itself. So it's going to be like this. For example, there is a main function which has a function calling statement for some other function. Now after reaching this particular statement, compiler will normally go to that particular function and execute it and come back. That is what we had seen in the previous slide. But now if you make it inline implementation, then what will happen is that the compiler will bring the content of the called function inside the calling function. So the code from the function gets copied inline. So it becomes as if it is a single function. So the main itself is going to have the code that includes the code of the function also, and this happens before the execution. Okay, this is happening before the execution. So during compilation itself, when the compiler is translating your program into machine language, it will see that you have made a request for inline, and so it will copy that particular function's code into the function calling statement. By replacing the function calling statement, it will be copied, and this saves the time. And what you have to do to make a function inline? You just have to do one simple thing. Simply write inline in front of the function name. So you have to precede the function definition with the keyword inline. So what do you mean when you say inline is that you are actually requesting the compiler to bring this code into the function calling statement instead of making a control transfer. It's a request. Remember, it is a request that the compiler may or may not take it seriously. So it is left to the compiler whether to fulfill that or just to ignore it. There is a chance for that your code may be copied into the actual function itself rather than making a control transfer. So in this code, this is a single line program. So it is a waste of time to do a complete transfer from this function to that function and coming back. So you can make it simply inline. And as I told you, the compiler is going to merge these two functions so that it simply look like this. So you can see that the code that is part of the max function gets merged with the actual function itself. So it looks like a single function having all the code. Now the question that could arise in your mind is that why shouldn't we directly write it as a single function instead of writing it as two different functions and then asking for them to be merged? This is for the purpose of readability. So we have seen that writing programs comprising of several functions has many advantages, and one of them is it makes your logic to look very clear. So say for example, you can see clearly that this function is the one that chooses which is the largest of the among A and B. And similarly, you may write a lot of functions where you have a separate particular logic and the program looks very clear. Writing everything into a same function is going to spoil that. So you are, by doing this inline function, you are trying to get the benefit of both. So at the time of writing the program, it looks like two different functions, but before execution it becomes a single function. This is the idea behind inline functions. It does not have any advantage or any benefit to the programmer. So for the programmer, it will be look same way. That is, you are going to write the program in the same way, just adding the keyword inline, and you may have some slight reduction in time of execution. It's not going to improve the accuracy of the result, just going to reduce the time of execution, and that too is very negligible from human point of view. And it also has a disadvantage that it makes the program to look very large. So let's say you are writing a program with a lot of functions and you make every function as inline. In that case, it will make the program, that is the main function, to look very large. That is a drawback. So what is the suggestion is that you must choose only small functions to be made inline. You should not make the larger functions to be made inline. Only small functions, like this particular case where you just have a single line of code. For these kind of functions, making them inline is better. And also there are also restrictions followed by some of the compilers. Some compilers will completely ignore the inline request. Some compilers will selectively accept the request. So for example, a lot of compilers won't consider recursive functions to be made inline. So even if you request that a particular recursive function to be made inline, compilers won't accept that. So they will reject it, because a recursive function requires multiple calling of itself. So making them inline will affect the execution of the particular function. So recursive functions cannot be made inline. Similarly, some compilers won't accept the request for inline if that function contains the loop statements. So basically it is a idea that may or may not work in the actual compiler that you are working with. Another idea is that you can also make a class member function to be inline. For example, here I have got a class that contains a function called init and a function called show. And as we have already seen, we can either declare the functions inside the class and define them outside, or we can directly declare and define within the class itself. But the general practice is that we always declare the functions inside the class and define them outside the class. That is what is a good practice. So that's we just practice it in most of our programs. So in that case, it is once again going to have that control transfer. So what we do instead is that we just add the keyword inline here. Now before execution, this function will be merged with within the class. So it's going to look like the class itself is containing the definitions of the functions. This is also an optional. Even if you don't do it, you won't see any real difference in the output. And the point to be noted is that this is only when you make the function, you define the function outside the class. But if you define the function inside the class, then you don't need to use the keyword inline here, because it is automatically inline. So it is already part of the class definition. So there is no need of any inline keyword. It's inline by default. The next topic is about returning by reference. We have seen about call by reference. So call by reference is about passing parameters which can be modified at the called function, and the modification is also visible at the calling function. For that we have seen two options. One is through pointers, and other one is through reference variable. So C++ has got an additional way by which we can implement call by reference. It's called reference variable. So if you do not know it, then just go through that video lecture on functions. So in that an example was taken. So now also I am going to discuss about reference variable, but in this case we are actually talking about returning by reference. So just like you can call by reference, you can also return by reference. The meaning of return by reference is that normally when you return, that is when you return a value from one function to another function, you generally return the some value, constant value, or the value of some variable, so that it can be used at the calling function. But in rare cases, you can also return a reference variable which can be manipulated by the calling function. I am going to take an example to understand this. My example is that there is a function which is declared with ampersand as the return type. So the return type of this function is int ampersand. The meaning conveyed to the compiler through this declaration is that this function is going to return an integer reference variable. So ampersand indicates it's a reference variable, and int indicates the data type. And remember, if I implemented this using pointers, then I should have mentioned asterisk here. So that is the difference between reference variable and pointer variable. For pointer variable, we must declare the return type with asterisk, whereas for reference variable, ampersand. Number one. After that, I have a static int variable inside this function. Once again, you should be remembering that a static local variable has got a unique characteristics. This was already discussed in a video lecture. I'm just repeating that point here. So the difference between a normal local variable and a static local variable is that the normal local variable's scope and lifetime is limited to the function execution. So it's like the moment this function is executed, compiler allocates memory for that local variable and manipulates its address whenever there is a statement manipulating that variable, and finally while leaving it destroys that particular memory. This particular point is what important. After the execution of the function, the local variables are all destroyed, the memory is cancelled and the values are all removed. So it becomes non-existing after the execution of the function is over. And similarly visibility is also reduced, that this function variables are these local variables can be accessed only by the function within which they are declared, not outside. Now the static variable is going to have the same visibility. The visibility of a static local variable has not been changed. It's accessible only within that particular function, but its lifetime is extended to that of a global variable. So what happens with a static local variable is that it's going to be treated as like a global variable. So its lifetime is till the entire program is under execution. So even if the function in which it is declared is completed, it stopped, still the memory will not be removed for the static int variable, and the value that is stored in that memory will also be retained. This will be happening till the program is under execution. So in this case what happens is that static int x equal to initialize with 0, and then it is getting printed, and then there is it's being returned. Now what happens is that in the main function I make this particular function call for 5 times. So 0 to 5 the function gets called, and each time I am incrementing the function. Remember, this is a peculiar statement. We generally don't increment functions. We can increment variables only, not functions, but here it is accepted because the return type is mentioned as reference variable of x. So what actually means when you say function plus plus is that it's equivalent to x plus plus. So at the time of execution, after the function is executed, it is going to return the x as a return type as the reference variable. So then it is incremented, and when it is incremented, because it is a static variable, the value is getting incremented to 1, and then next time when this statement is executed again, once again x will be incremented by 2, and till it will be incremented to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is this kind of an usage is possible only because we are returning a reference variable. So returning a reference variable has a very limited actual usage. So you don't have to bother much about understanding this particular category, but you just have to know that it is possible. So it is possible to return reference variables or pointers from functions so that they can be manipulated by the calling function, like I just showed you in this example. This is just one more example. You can also see here that here there is a function coming in the left hand side of an assignment statement. Once again, this is a peculiar instruction. Generally we never can put the functions at the left hand side. Functions can only be coming in the right hand side of assignment statements, but in this case also this happens only because it is returning a reference variable. So what you actually mean by s set x plus equal to 1 is nothing but x plus equal to 1. So that is what really the meaning here. And one point to be noted is that once you have mentioned the return type to be a reference variable, then you can't attempt to return a constant value. So that is a mistake. It has to be a variable. A normal variable alone can be returned. You can't return any constant value, and it is an error in this given example. The next point regarding function arguments is const function arguments. See, the idea behind the call by reference is that it allows you to modify the return value. It allows you to modify the arguments, and so the modification will be retained at the calling function. But sometimes if we want to we don't want to allow this to happen, and before that if you do not want the argument not to be manipulated, then what is the point of call by reference? That is a question you may have in your mind. If I do not want the called function to modify the value of the variable, then why should I go for call by reference in the first case? Call by reference has other advantages also. That is, we have already seen elaborately that function calls always involve the usage of stack. So lot of local variables will be pushed into the stack, and one way of avoiding it is usage of call by reference. So when you forward the arguments as reference variables, you are not going to pass the actual values to the functions, you are only going to pass the base addresses. We have seen how an array can be passed. So even if the array is of 1000 elements, you are still going to pass only the base address. One address alone needs to be passed, and with the help of it everything can be traced. So call by reference reduces the amount of transfer from calling function to the called function. So in that case also we go for call by reference. Let us assume that in a particular condition I want to use call by reference, but I want to ensure that no modification should happen on the arguments. For that, the simple usage is usage of const in front of the argument name. So now what happens is that this is declared in the normal way, int ampersand a, it's a reference variable, and this one is declared as const int ampersand b. And so you can modify a since it is a normal variable, but you can't modify b because it's declared as constant argument. So constant arguments cannot be modified by the called functions. That's a point. The next point is passing objects as function arguments. So we can pass anything from a function to another function, even class objects. We just have to note down the syntax to be followed, and before that whether it's going to be call by value or call by reference. So by default, when you pass an object from one function to another, it is going to be treated as call by value only. Only when you use a reference variable or a pointer, it will become call by reference. So only arrays are treated as call by reference by default. Whether it is a structure variable or a class object, they are all going to be treated as call by value only. This example demonstrates the usage of call by value for passing an object. So in this example, what we are passing is the object of the class my class, which is created. The object is created as obj, and you can also take a note of the way in which it's initialized. So normally when you want to initialize x, we used to assign int x equal to 0, but it is also possible to initialize a class object member using this particular syntax: my class obj equal to, within braces you can put the value, and after the object is created, I am passing the obj as an argument to a function called function, and within that function x is assigned 5, and after I come back, that is after the control returns to the calling function, we try to print the value of x, but even though there is a assignment happened here, it will still remain 0. So output will be only 0 only. That is because in call by value you are only making a copy of the argument and sending it to the called function, and no change will be impacted in the any change made in the argument will not be impacted in the original argument of the calling function. So that's what happened here. Now I am going to show you another version of this implementation where I have made it call by reference. So the first thing you have to notice is that here I have declared it as ampersand. So my class is the type of argument I'm going to pass to this function. Remember, this is a function prototype. Function prototype is nothing but declaration of a function, and where I have said that I'm going to pass the object of this particular class as a reference variable. After that, I'm passing the obj, and here also I have declared as ampersand o, and o dot x equal to 5. Now everything else looks the same, but the output will now in this case will be 5. So it won't print 0, but it will print 5 for this cout statement. That is because it is now called by reference. And the last topic to be covered is something called friend functions. So friend functions are very unique to C++. They are not present in other object-oriented languages. They have been avoided because friend functions is actually a concept that violates the OOPS concepts. So we have seen that one of the basic concept of OOPS is data hiding. So a private function, a private data should be hidden from outside functions. It can be accessed only by the member functions of the same class. But a friend function can be used to violate that particular restriction. It may be useful in some cases, but in general it's not a good way to deal with object oriented programming. And as a result, after the C++, the languages that came like Java, C#, they don't have the concept of friend functions. So in C++, we can make use of this particular concept. Now what is the idea? The idea is that normally the private members of a class can be accessed only by member functions of the same class. But in rare cases, if you want to allow a non-member function of a class to access the private members of a class, then you can make it a friend of the particular class. I can give you a simple analogy to understand this. Let's say you have a television at your home, which is typically private. So it is only can be used by the members of your family, or those who stay in your home can access the TV. They can watch the TV, they can change the channels, they can handle the television remote, and outsiders cannot handle that. But you will relax this particular rule for your friends. Let's say your close friend has come to your home, and there you will be allowing him or her to access your television as if he is part of your family. That's what the idea here also. So besides the members of a class, you can also allow friend functions of which are non-members to access the private members. So the next point is that how do we make a function to be friend of a class? This is how we have to do. We just have to precede the function name with the friend. Just carefully observe, class, my class is a class where there are two members int a and b. By now you should have understood that these are private members. So when you don't specify anything about the accessibility, they become private by default. So a and b are private members, which means that they are only accessible by these two member functions, setAb. Okay, only one member function called setAb, but you are going to introduce a non-member function as friend of this particular class using the keyword friend. So friend int sum, and you are going to pass the object of this class as argument. So when you say that it is a friend, it means that it is a non-member function. So it also conveyed through the keyword friend. You will never make the member function to be friend, and it is also not acceptable. Only non-member functions can be declared as a friend. So you have declared a function, and you can define it outside the class. So this is how we can define. It's a normal function definition. What I do is that I take the argument as object and then increment the value of a and b and just return it. And remember, this will never work if it is not a member friend function. You can never access the private members like this from a non-member function. x.a plus x.b will be treated as an error if this statement is not there. But now that you have already said to the compiler that treat this function as friend of this class, compiler is not going to show any error message. So it will accept this access. Now inside the main function, I just make a function call to the first member function is called as n dot set ab. N is an object, so object dot member function name, and the values are passed. And to invoke the next function, that is non-member function, we cannot and should not use the object name. So we should never write n dot sum, because only for member functions you can write object name dot function name, but for non-member functions you will just write the function name and you pass the object n as an argument. Now what will happen? N will come here, it will be recognized in the name of x, so x dot a plus x dot b is equal to n dot a plus n dot b, which is nothing but 4 plus 3. So the value returned will be 7 only, and that will be printed here. This is a small demo to demonstrate that you can also allow a non-member function of a class to access the private members, provided you make it as a friend of that particular class. Now what is the usage of friend functions? Although there is a we could have just made it as a member function. So instead of complicating this, I could have just made it as a friend function, and here the declaration could have been provided with the scope resolution class name. But why I deliberately make it as a friend function is that it has some real usages. In this case it may look like unnecessary usage, but there are some good usages for friend functions. Number one, friends can be useful in some of the operator overloading. So while we discuss operator overloading, we will make use of this particular concept of friend functions. And secondly, some IO functions can be implemented better with the friend functions. And thirdly, when you want to implement a function which need to access multiple objects, then you can go for friend function. So it is really the third particular requirement or usage which we are going to focus on. That is, if you want to write a program in such a way that you have got more than one classes, okay, there are multiple classes in the program, and you create objects for each class, you want to implement one function which can manipulate all the objects. Remember, a member function of a class can only manipulate that particular object members. It can't manipulate the members of another object. But if you have a particular requirement that a particular function has to access multiple objects of different classes, then the only option is friend function. So we will explore this particular idea by an implementation. I will just demonstrate here a program where I will be implementing the third point.